A finish nailer is really a great addition to the shop, and there are so many places where this can make your work more efficient and a whole lot easier to do. So let's talk about, if you're buying a finish nailer, what you should look for. First thing we want to talk about is gauges. Nailers are available in different gauges: 23 gauge, 18 gauge, 15 gauge, 16 gauge. Remember that with gauges, as the number gets bigger, the thing gets smaller. So a 23 gauge nailer is a smaller pin than a 16 gauge nailer like I have here. When you're nailing heavier stock, for instance moldings in a house, then you want to have a larger nail to make sure you have enough holding power for that stuff. Now let's look at the gun itself and some stuff that you might want to look for. Here on the handle of the gun, one of the evolutions in guns I really like are the soft grips that they're putting on them. I'm in my shop a long time each day, and having that a little bit easier to hold on to and less slippery than it would be if it was just a metal handle is very, very nice. The other thing we want to look for is, if you get a jam, what do you have to do in order to fix that? So what I'm talking about here is tool-free nail clearing. So the way that happens on this gun is, if I push this bail down, that allows this to snap open. If I had nails in here, they could come out right here. So it's a great feature because when I'm working, suddenly I got a nail jammed in there. I don't have to run around looking for just the right tool in order to open up the nose of the finish nailer. The other thing I like is tool-free depth of punch. So what I'm talking about there is, when we drive nails into different thicknesses of material, we're going to want to control how far it goes in, and in pine, that's going to be different than in oak. So let's have a look at how this works on this gun. Fastening these two components together. Now the shot that I just did right there, the head of the nail is even with my material. No room for wood dough. So what I'm looking for in a gun is the ability to control that tool free. On this particular gun, I can do that by turning this dial, and that's going to change the depth to which this gun can drive the nail into the material. So it's very, very easy to do on the fly, which is very convenient. The other thing that's handy is that when I shoot a nail, of course it uses air, so air has to come out of the gun someplace because it's going into the gun someplace. So what I want is an exhaust here on the top of the gun that I can control. So if you've been to the eye doctor recently, when they do a glaucoma test, at least back in the day, they'd put that puff of air up against your eyeball. I don't want a glaucoma test every time I use my nail gun. So when I can change the direction of that exhausting air, then it's not blowing in my face. Very, very convenient. The other thing that we're looking for here is the ability to control whether we do what's called sequential nailing or bump nailing. In sequential nailing, I'm going to contact my material, push the safety down, squeeze the trigger. Now, each time I want to shoot a nail, I have to do that action again. In bump nailing, I can hold the trigger, and every time I contact, I can put in a nail. So on this particular gun, the way that's controlled is by this lever here. I'm currently in the bump nail mode. If I do that, now I'm in sequential nailing, and it won't allow me to bump nail. Now here's something that can be really frustrating when you're using a nailer, a pneumatic stapler, and that is, if it continues to drive, the piston continues to go even though you're out of nails in here. And what we want to avoid is what's called dry firing, which means you have no nails, but that plunger comes down and it leaves a little impression in your material, and it can look as though you put a nail in, and unfortunately you get the bad news when you pick the parts up and they come apart. So on some guns, including this one, if I take the nails out, so now we know the gun is empty, and I contact my material, the gun knows it's empty and it won't allow me to fire. So a lot of great features available on guns there's a shopping list for you of things you can look for when you're shopping for a gun for your wood shop.